computer-programmed reality, and the only clue we have to it is when some variable is changed and some alteration in our reality occurs. We would have the overwhelming impression that we were reliving the present, déjà vu, perhaps in precisely the same way, hearing the same words, saying the same words. I submit that these impressions are valid and significant, and I will even say this: such an impression is a clue that at some past time point a variable was changed, reprogrammed as it were, and that because of this an alternative world branched off.
Greetings and welcome to another edition of Free Association Radio. This is Robert Phoenix broadcasting to you live from the heart of Texas, South Central Texas, aka Austin, formerly known as Waterloo. Not a lot of people know that. Not a lot of Austinites even know that this place was once named Waterloo. Of course, named for the battle, the great battle, where Napoleon met his Waterloo. And that battle actually changed the course of history. The Rothschilds were on top of it, and they knew that the English had won, that they had vanquished Napoleon, and they knew because there was a carrier pigeon that relayed the message to the Rothschilds. So the word was getting back that the English had lost at Waterloo, although the Rothschilds knew the truth. And what they did is they actually bought huge amounts of stocks. Huge amounts of stocks. They didn't do anything to discount the rumor that the English had lost. So what happened? They wound up accumulating large amounts of wealth during a crisis, during a period of chaos. And as a result of that, became one of the richest families in Western Europe, a feat that was similarly reenacted by George Soros many years later as he gained the silver market in England and made a fortune as a result of it. So here we are in Waterloo, Texas, also known as Austin. By the way, we're going to get into doubles, we're going to get into clones, we're going to get into replacements on today's show. We've got a void of course moon getting ready to go into Pisces. And tonight we have the lunar eclipse, which happens at 23 degrees in the sign of Pisces, opposite the 23-degree Virgo sun. We'll also talk about that as well a little bit later in the show. By the way, you can watch a movie on the Rothschilds. It's on YouTube. It's free. And it's a pretty accurate historical account of the rise of the family the family of Meyer Amschel, who took the name Rothschild, which is essentially Red Shield, Rothschild, Red Shield. And you can watch this movie. I think it was made in the late 30s. And it is a glowing cinematic portrayal of the Rothschild family. Now, there are historical accuracies inside the film. So it's actually worth watching. However, of course, they are portrayed as gentle, kind, humanistic, self-sacrificial, scapegoated. Yes, scapegoated. And ultimately triumphant over the dark and anti-Semitic minds of Western culture and royalty. Royalty that wasn't busy making a buck off of them because they knew how to do it. Anyway, it's on YouTube, worth watching. Since we're on the subject of the Rothschilds and George Soros, and as we begin to merge into the greater stream of consciousness that we'll be getting into today about body doubles and clones and replacements, have a look at George Soros and David Rockefeller. By the way, I made a mistake last week. I talked about, or might have been earlier in the week. You know, I've been doing these 15 minutes of flame on Monday through Thursday. 15-minute verse broadcast, just, you know, kind of getting into it, taking one topic or maybe two, and doing my best to drill down, give you some facts, give you some opinion. Not everybody agrees with what I have to say, and that's okay. It's okay. I put stuff out there, and some of it is, you know, a little on the controversial side. Some of it's a little on the outside side, but I don't care. It's okay. First thing that somebody pushed back on was that I said that there were no planes on 9/11, and I to this day I hold to that there were no planes. I believe that the Twin Towers were taken down by detonation, and my sense is, based on the work of Jim Fetzer and his researchers, that, you know, Judy Wood, that it was a nuke. Both buildings were lined with small, limited nukes. The planes were inserted as part of the newscasts because the graphics for the planes just don't match up to the buildings. It's very, very bizarre, very unusual. The Pentagon, that's a missile. There's no plane that hit the Pentagon. In Shanksville, I had somebody, Donna, came to my site and said something happened there, plane crashed there. There was a what's her name? The beauty queen, the former beauty queen. Oh, man, I'm spacing out. I'm having a senior moment. I just have to go to my comments. Hold on a second. Let me find the comments on my website. Hold on. It's one of Art Bell. She got her chops on Art Bell. What's her name? She is the, let's see, okay, hold on. Linda Moulton Howe, sorry. Okay, Linda Moulton Howe apparently did a story on Shanksville, and some guy saw ghosts there, and, you know, I mean, I remember when 9/11 happened, and I'm going to bring this back to Soros Rockefeller, by the way. I remember when 9/11 happened, and clearly I realized that something was amiss. I was one of the few people at the time, imagine that. I remember looking at my girlfriend on 9/11, the morning of 9/11, and I told her, I said, we're fucked. We're fucked. And I'm using the word because it's in context. because I knew what was going to unfold after that, and I actually thought it was going to happen faster than it has, but it happened pretty quickly. I mean, they rolled out the Patriot Act. They had cooked this thing up with the project of the New American Century for New American Century, Clear Break Doctrine. This is all part of the context and the prologue to the events. And I got up to speed very, very quickly, and I knew things weren't right, and I knew that this would allow them to begin to insert their totalitarian government, which we've been moving towards steadily, and may take a turn to the hard right here very soon. I don't think a plane crashed in Shanksville. And Linda Moulton Howe, I'm sorry, with all due respect to Donna, who stopped by the site and commented, and I thank you for listening to the show. There is a great video on Netflix that has Linda Moulton Howe in it, and it's about UFOs, and it's about how she was patently deceived by somebody inside of NASA. It was like she found an inside source, and NASA played her to the hilts. The movie's worth watching. I forget what it's called. It's on Netflix. You can look up Linda Moulton Howe on Netflix. You'll see the movie. And she was completely and utterly embarrassed as a result of this. So, I'm sure she does good work, good research work, but at the end of the day, if she's believing some guy that says that he saw a ghost climb out of there or walk around, I think it has about as much credibility as her UFO stuff, because she was being led down a path of disinformation. Now, it might be true. There may be a ghost there. I don't know. But I don't think there was a plane there. I remember when 9/11 happened. It was just like, what? What's that wreckage? And you get into it. It's like, well, where's the engine? Sure, we've got an impact site, but where's the engine? Where's the blood? Where are the human remains? We didn't see any of it. None of it. So I put it out there, no planes. I'll stick by it, no planes. Missile, Pentagon, controlled demolition, Twin Towers, nothing in Shanksville except for a debris field that was brought in. That's my 3 cents, a cent for each one of them. Okay, let's go back to Soros. If you've ever really looked at George Soros, he looks a heck of a lot like David Rockefeller. I mean, put them up side by side, and you tell me if there's not a striking similarity. Now, of course, Soros has kids, and he's got a house, and there's a whole George Soros kind of life out there, right? But I also find it interesting that David Rockefeller has pretty much gone from the public eye since George Soros has come onto the scene and become the scourge of Western politics, the evil Jew who cooperated with Nazis just so he could save his own hide and turn his own people in. Meanwhile, bankrupting the country of England by playing the silver market. But he looks a lot like David Rockefeller. Is he David Rockefeller? I don't know, but look at the pictures. Look at the pictures. And we haven't seen a lot of David Rockefeller over the last few years. Maybe the guy is old, decrepit, and, eating embryos and, children under the age of 1 has, not helped him with his longevity. So this brings us to Hillary and what's happening with Hillary and her disappearing act. I just keep thinking of the movie The Prestige. If you have not seen The Prestige, I highly recommend it. Highly recommend it. It stars Christian Bale. And again, I'm having another senior moment here. God. This is terrible. Must be the implants in my head. That's what it is. So The Prestige stars Christian Bale and Hugh Jackman. And the director is Christopher Nolan. And I love Christopher Nolan. He's an amazing director. I think he's directed some of the most important films of the 21st century. And right at the top of the list is Interstellar, which I highly recommend if you haven't seen it. So much in that movie. Anyway, The Prestige is about a magic act. And it represents, the magic act has to do with the disappearance of one person and the reappearance of the same person. And that person is played by Christian Bale. And his rival is Robert Angier. Christian Bale, his character's name is Alfred Borden. And Hugh Jackman is insanely jealous as a rival magician. And he does his very best to come up with a trick that will rival Borden, a.k.a. Bale's disappearing and reappearing act. And as a result of his desperation to become the greatest magician in Europe on Earth, he travels to the United States in order to find somebody who can help him recreate the illusion in his own way. And in so doing, he travels to Colorado to meet Tesla. And who is Tesla played by? David Bowie. And he pays Tesla a significant amount of money to build him a contraption that allows him to step inside of it, disappear, and reappear. He's using technology in order to affect a change. Now, what's interesting about this, I don't want to blow the movie. If you haven't seen it, you got to see it, is that there is a price to pay when you deal with technology to recreate the semblance of a disappearance. That's all I'm going to say. But in the movie, and I have to tell you one thing because it's important. If you don't want to hear a bit of a spoiler, close your ears. Right now, I'm going to spoiler in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, if your ears are open, what happens with Borden, aka Bale, is that he doesn't disappear and reappear. He has a twin. This is the secret of his act. And they are secretly twins throughout their life. And they wind up swapping wives and doing all kinds of crazy stuff. And Angier doesn't know this. He finds out later in the end and winds up exacting revenge. You know, in this case, he almost becomes like a Salieri-like character from Amadeus. So the reason why I'm bringing The Prestige up is because what's happened with Hillary is very Prestige-like. It's almost like a magic act. And 9/11 itself is a magic act. Just think of this now. Now we're looking at this from a different tableau. Because what we saw with 9/11 is really not what happened. And that in and of itself sets up a completely different paradigm in relationship to the events. What we saw was an illusion. It was a trick of the mind. And it was staged impeccably. Impeccably. If you go into the genesis of 9/11, you'll see that the first people that they talk with that are right there on the scene have loads of information and are connecting dots. How are they connecting these dots? And the people, by the way, turn out to be news producers, and there's a whole slew of hired hands that are ready to roll as they begin to the eyewitness on the scene interview process, which helps sell the narrative. Now, there may be New Yorkers that will say, hey, I saw a plane fly into the building. That's fine. You can email me or whatever. I don't care. But from what I've seen graphically, those planes are inserted. Now, there may have been something that might have hit the second building, but I don't think it was a plane. To this day, I say no planes. Controlled demolition. If you look at the history of 9/11, you have the B project, right? It's this art group from Holland, the B project, and they create something inside of the I think it's the North Tower, and they're there for almost 90 days. What are they doing there? They got a grant from one of the local arts councils. One of the guys on the arts council was connected to the Mossad. I mean, I just add the stuff up here. But what we saw was an illusion. It was a trick of the mind. What we thought happened did not happen. And we've been trying to, or at least some of us have, been trying to understand and piece together what actually happened ever since then. What happened with Hillary on 9/11, I believe, is also a trick of the mind. And we're trying to piece together what happened there. It makes complete sense that we would have this experience with Hillary on 9/11. So let's just walk through what occurred. She shows up, she's there, she's mingling. She's not there for very long. Just enough to be noticed. Just enough to be a face in the crowd, a reference point. I think she wasn't there for more than 5 minutes, if I'm not mistaken. And then what happens is she doesn't feel good, and she's taken away from the crowd, and this is where things get strange. It looks as though she's got her hands tied behind her back and her feet in shackles, and she's being pushed along and kind of falling into her ambulance service van. Now, the original report was that she was faint from heat exhaustion, even though it was 75 degrees that day, with a slight breeze. So she fainted. That was the original report. But then as we look at it more and more and more, that doesn't begin to make sense. Especially as she collapses and there's, if she's really not in cuffs, then she's convulsing. It almost feels like close to the end at that point, to me. And then she gets, basically shoved into that van, her shoes left behind, which is interesting, right? The shoes, Pisces, representative of the soul. How about that? Body removed from the soul, symbolically. But then She gets raced off. They go right past the hospital. They go to Chelsea's. Let's get her to Chelsea. Now, apparently, Chelsea has a major kind of care facility inside of her condo. I'm sure she's got a pretty sweet condo, pretty big. That's where she goes, and then out emerges somebody completely different. Shorter, kind of different bone structure on the face. There's no Secret Service around her. This is a dead giveaway because the Secret Service must be around people that they are assigned to guard in public 24/7. There's nobody there. Nobody. She walks out, she waves, says something, a little girl comes up to her, they have a photo op moment, and then off she goes. Then it's reported that she has pneumonia. Then it's reported she took a flu shot. And her resurrection from pneumonia is pretty quick, pretty sudden, pretty rapid. Because that was on Sunday. And on Thursday, boom, she's down in North Carolina. Looking younger, fresher, and quite frankly, a lot different. I want to read you something that is it's fairly controversial, but I'm going to read it to you anyway. I picked this off of Jeff Rentz. This is an unverified report. Unverified report. I'm going to read this. This is what Jeff wrote. He says, "Note, we received this from an unverified source. That said, it closely mirrors the general conclusions Dr. James Fetzer and I arrived at Thursday, 9/14/16. Given all the observable data, we believe Hillary Clinton is either deceased or is likely and logically in a secret medical facility in the rear half of Chelsea's condominium on the 4th floor she owns in a New York residential building. Hillary was most likely taken straight there, right past Bellevue Hospital, after her full-body seizure and total collapse at the 9/11 memorial last Sunday. Meanwhile, the New World Order will continue to push Hillary's body double as if Hillary has made an astonishing recovery, lost 20 to 30 pounds, looks far younger, and has suddenly never been more eloquent and articulate giving a campaign speech in North Carolina. They also say, we also note the absence of her longtime top aide, Huma Abedin. Now, if you listen to Hillary, she's incredibly articulate. Incredibly, but this woman does not look like her. So here's the progress note that was sent to them on the 14th, 2 days ago. Mental status rapidly declined over past 24 hours, arousable by loud voice commands, but immediately lapses into major stupor without further response. MAP failed to improve with further increase in norepinephrine, the EpiPen. CPP 50, despite increase of ventilatory rate in an effort to decrease ICP. Cerebral perfusion disturbances were observed on repeated TCDs. Diffusion-weighted imaging, cytotoxic and vasogenic edema, as well as neural damage. EEG not utilized due to continued benzodiazepine infusion. It says here global irreversible brain damage caused by sepsis-associated encephalopathy. So here's more of the progress note. This is from the 13th of September. Hillary Clinton talked to CNN's Anderson Cooper via phone. Audio spoken is the spoken voice of Hillary Rodham Clinton. However, the quick chat with Anderson Cooper was scripted and rehearsed, which is why it sounds canned. Remember, this is CNN. Hillary Clinton is in a high-security, secluded, private intensive care unit with 4-to-1 nursing 24/7. She also has a team of physicians representing practically every medical specialty. There are no other patients anywhere near her secure care setting. She is dying of sepsis. She is on broad spectrum big gun antibiotics to treat the pneumonia. However, she is still severely immunocompromised, and the antibiotics are not anticipated to be curative. Pneumonia has continued to worsen and cause further damage to her lungs. She has been trached, that's a tracheotomy, right? So she's gotten something going in her throat, and pegged. She is on ventilator support with high FiO2 at low tidal volume. She is receiving nutritional feeds through her PEG tube. She was able to speak and spoke over the phone with Mr. Cooper with the aid of a Passy-Muir valve. Aggressive fluid resuscitation in combination with vasopressor support were successful in making her hemodynamically stable for the time being. She is conscious and partially oriented. However, vasopressor support is now maxed out, and fluid resuscitation is already leading to third spacing. Apache scores indicate extremely high mortality. Efforts to keep her oxygenated with mechanical ventilation is causing further damage. So she's in an iron lung, basically, to her lungs. ECMO is not an option. Her acute lung injury is expected to progress to ARDS, to multi-system organ failure, and then to clinical death. Palliative measures have been recommended but have not been accepted. Advanced health care directive stands. Designated agent for medical decisions refuses DNR, do not resuscitate status. Agent demands full code and complete and total heroic measures. That agent is supposed to be Chelsea Clinton, by the way. Here's the ending. She will never be allowed to be seen in the public eye again, even on television. Expect a closed casket ceremony due to the third spacing. Seems to me that they jumped in and they decided to replace Hillary. Now, I don't know who they've replaced her with. I don't know if this is a clone. I don't know if this is a double, but I can tell you unequivocally that is a different person. Now, I've shared this story before, and for those of you who are new to the show, you'll get to hear it for the first time. And those of you who have not, or have heard it, maybe it's been a while, so I'll risk the redundancy and share it again. Many years ago, I was traveling, and I wound up at a bed and breakfast in, of all places, Spokane, Washington, over the Christmas holiday in 1990, going to 1991. And the people that ran this B&B, very nice people, I was there by myself, me and my dog. Crazy weekend, actually. And her sister shows up. And I'm having breakfast and dinner with these people. And I don't know how we got on the subject, but they were from Antelope, Oregon. And of course, I knew that Antelope, Oregon had been taken over by the sect that was being run by Sri Bhagwan Rajneesh. And they turned it into Rajneeshpuram. So this is where, you know, all the devotees of Rajneesh were hanging out, and they were all wearing orange. And I got to know some of them actually earlier on. And she told me that, and they were, you know, these people were taking copious notes and pictures. I mean, this was their town, and it basically got hijacked. I mean, and so this is what's happening, by the way, in the middle part of the country, where Muslims are being brought in at a large number and at a rapid rate. So instead of sannyasins, there are Muslims, like for instance in Idaho, where they have the Chobani yogurt factory, was North Point, I think, becoming rapidly Muslim. And so we're seeing the takeover of communities. It's happened in Dearborn, Michigan. So this was back in the 80s, and it was with the sannyasins in Rajneesh. Anyway, she said that they were taking pictures and video because, again, their town had been essentially taken over. It was a siege. They ran the city council. They had more people than Antelope itself were part of Rajneeshpuram. So they wanted to figure out what the hell's going on here. And they were photographing Rajneesh and videotaping him. And she said to me that the guy that went in there when they first started out was not the guy that left. He was different. And she said, we think he was his brother or a double. And this woman was not nuts. She was not a conspiracy tinfoil, hat-wearing basket case. She was a regular person living in a small town that had gotten taken over. And she wanted to have a record of what was going on, not only her, but the other people that were there. And she was convinced that this guy was different, that Rajneesh was different. Now, what's interesting is that at one point, Rajneesh takes a vow of silence. He doesn't speak to anybody. Isn't that convenient? In the meantime, the community is taken over by a woman by the name of Ma Anand Sheila. And she is clearly the handler of whoever Rajneesh had become. Whether it was his brother, whether it was a clone, I don't know. But she was now in control. And there is a great, like 20-part article that a journalist by the name of Alexander Coburn wrote for the Oregonian. And he gets into the dark side of Rajneeshpuram and what they were doing. They were essentially laundering money, huge amounts of money. They were stashing drugs. They were stashing guns. I mean, it was basically a criminal enterprise. And Ma Anand Sheila's husband worked for the World Bank. So now we have the World Bank, the specter of the World Bank behind what happened in Antelope, Oregon in the 80s. Now keep in mind, we're talking about a double, all right, a double. And then, of course, the feds come in, they bust the community up. Rajneesh has nowhere to go, nobody will accept him, and then he dies. Rajneesh was brilliant. He was a brilliant guru. You know, he was one of the crazy wisdom gurus. Everybody wanted to go to Pune when Rajneesh had his place there. He got kicked out. The Indians didn't like him. They kicked him out. Went to Germany and eventually showed up in Oregon. But he was brilliant. Listen to some of his ideas. Listen to some of his talks. And you'll see that the guy had some real insight into human nature and psychology and the profound relationship between us and the spiritual dimension in life. I'm not a guru person, but he was interesting. There are other cases and examples of doubles showing up. Clearly, there was more than one Bush. Easily more than one Bush. Now, were they body doubles or were they clones? Now, the whole idea of a clone is a very difficult thing to accept in a lot of ways. However, I believe that the science is there and has been there for quite a long time. And I've shared this before. There's a guy by the name of Peter Beater. What a name, huh? Peter Beater. And Peter Beater, you can find his talks on YouTube. And he was doing these talks back in the late 70s. And they were very interesting. They were audio newsletters that he would send out by cassette. And he was a Christian, and he talked about cloning, and he talked about robotoids, and he talked about how the Russians were in on the game and the Americans were on the game, and they had different kinds of models. That the robotoid was kind of a synthetic model. It was almost like a cross between a human and a robot. Synthetic robotoids. And then the humans had their own version with the clones. And apparently the two were kind of mixing and matching and inserting their versions of each other into places connected to the government. So they'd kill somebody and then they would insert somebody else. And very bizarre stuff, right? Now, I found out about Peter Beater later, Dr. Peter Beater later. I first really got hooked in and connected to the clone thing through George Green. And I was living in Olympia, Washington, and George Green came to town. This is right around 1990, close to where the Gulf War had been taking place. And I watched the Gulf War religiously. And I knew something was up in a big way. It was a real point of acceleration for me, my unfoldment, my spiritual awakening, my sort of political awakening, where the two converge. Interesting enough, if you listen to David Icke, he was going through the same thing that I was going through at that time. Of course, I was younger. But we were both going through the same thing simultaneously. Which brings up this idea that, there are times where spirit wants to download certain things to people. And will download these things to a number of people just to make sure they get it. Or that, it's like a broadcast. And I was part of the broadcast. And apparently Ike was too. So I wind up going to see this talk with George Green because I've been watching the Gulf War religiously, clocking everything. And I was watching George Bush and the 1,000 Points of Light and the New World Order. I'm like, wow, this is happening. This is really happening. And I watched George Bush take on this kind of amazing power, expansive. And whenever we have a press conference or he would address Congress or these bankers, he was larger than life. I think his nickname is what? Gog, Magog. That was his Skull and Bones nickname, unlike his son whose nickname was Temporary. Gog, Magog are the two trees that are on the, I don't know if they're still there or not. I haven't been there in a long time. If you go to Glastonbury, you go to the tour, they have like a procession of oaks, which are really no longer there, but there are these two massive oaks, Gog and Magog, that are right there at Glastonbury. So that was his name. He was becoming this, very powerful figure. And one day I watched him walk off a plane. He was over in the Middle East. Maybe he was in Saudi Arabia or Bahrain or someplace like that. And he walks down the gangplank of the plane, and it's like he's in a trance. I'm like, what's going on with this guy? And he sticks his hand out very mechanically and almost stumbles down the gangplank. And I'm like, this is not the same guy. This is not the incredibly expanding man that I saw about 2 months ago. It didn't make sense to me. And then I listened to him talk, and he was kind of unsure. And I'm like, whoa. Slow this tape down. What's happening? So I went to the event with George Green, and Green starts to talk about clones. And I've had George Green on my show. He's an interesting guy. And I've talked about this before, but we have to bring it up again because we're talking about replacements, doubles, potentiality of clones. Yeah, I don't care if you think I'm crazy. I don't. So we talk about it, and I ask him, so what happened with Bush? It looked like he was really having this major kind of life moment, and all of a sudden I get nothing from the guy. He's been replaced. He's a clone. This is what George Green says to me. I'm like, makes sense. Makes total sense to me. Now, fast forward, I'm leaving Olympia, Washington, which is where I was living, driving to California. It's late at night, and I'm listening to the radio. It's the first time I ever heard Art Bell, although Art was not Mr. Dreamland. He was kind of the late night version of Rush Limbaugh. He was conservative. Art Bell was a conservative late night talk show host that had a Sunday night program that he was developing called Dreamland, which became ultimately Coast to Coast, right? Okay. Listening to Art Bell, and all of a sudden this news flash comes in, and Bush, who'd been in China, collapses at dinner with the Chinese government. Face plants right into his food. And I was with my girlfriend at the time, and we looked at each other, and we started laughing. And we said, the clone expired. The clone died. And sure enough, that's exactly what happened. And they've propped him up ever since then. Now, who knows what we're on, what version clone we're on with him. Now, I don't know, I don't profess to know the ins and outs of clones, whether you can keep a clone around, if the let's call a clone the slave and the original copy the master. Okay? If the master dies, can the clones still exist? I don't know. Donald Marshall, who claims to be a clone, says no, that's not the case. And if the physical host is sick or ill or degraded, that the clone will begin to exhibit those kinds of symptoms. So it's possible, let's say, that the host or the master could be held in some kind of cryogenic suspension, that perhaps they're on a very low kind of life support coma that has enough, sort of living resonance and signal to keep the other clones alive. I don't know. I also find it very odd that, like, what they've just done with Shimon Peres and what they did with Ariel Sharon is they put him into these comas. I mean, Ariel Sharon has been in a coma for 14 years or something? I mean, some outrageous amount of time. And Shimon Peres is right there with him in coma land. Why? Is it because they want to have the holographic representation of these guys? So if they wanted to peel off and create doubles or whatever, they can do that. I don't know. I don't know the answer to it. But I do know that there's a history of this stuff. Look at the Beatles and, Paul. Paul is dead. Who's this guy? Who's this guy? Look at the ears. Look at the height. Doubles. The Beatles apparently had doubles. Doubles are not uncommon. They're not uncommon. Think about it. Back in the day, you might be able to get away with having maybe 2 or 3 Elvises, perhaps, and having them appear simultaneously, maybe before you got really, really famous. If you go back into the history of the blues, guys, this has nothing to do with clones, obviously, but, if you were, Smokin' Chitlin' Willie, and you were a blues player in Mississippi, and you were living in, say, North Carolina, they didn't know who Smokin' Chitlin' Willie was in Mississippi, and you showed up as Smokin' Chitlin' Willie, they wouldn't know the difference. So this whole idea of, changing identities, alters, doubles, clones, it's deeply embedded in our culture. But this Hillary thing is fascinating, absolutely fascinating, because again, we get back to this whole idea of the prestige and a magic act, and that 9/11 itself was a magic act. it was an occult trick. It was a ritual and an occult trick, a trick of the mind, an illusion. And perhaps what we saw with Hillary Clinton was the same thing. I mean, even like, for instance, that she was bound up, in chains. I mean, there are people that think that she was arrested. That's almost like a Harry Houdini thing. If you think about it, look at him. He's bound up. How's he going to get out of this? And boom, all of a sudden, he's popping out of Chelsea's apartment. Hi. And then she's in North Carolina, really, talking about, very articulate, very calm. But if you look at the pictures, if you look at the photos of the two Hillarys, the ears are different. Now, I've taken a lot of heat on Facebook for this. People say, well, ears are slightly different on each side. One ear might be more attached than the other. Okay. But what I tried to show, you can go to my Facebook page, and you can see where there's the ear of the quote-unquote new Hillary, the lobe is clearly attached. And you can even see where they may have even photoshopped it a little bit to make it look like it's not attached. I'm not crazy. And then you can also see in older photos of Hillary where her lobe is semi-attached. It's not like me. I've got the Buddha lobes, the flappers. But hers is semi-attached. Look at the ears. So what's going on here? Who is she? What is she? How is it going to affect things? How is it going to impact the election? Are we full steam ahead? Sure looks like it, depending upon how this new version of Hillary holds up. Because the old version was on its way out. And will this new version of Hillary be able to debate Trump in a debate? And Trump's probably scratching his funny head. Trump might be a clone too. I know I sound crazy, but the Trump that I've been seeing over the course of the last few months does not look like the guy that I've seen earlier. First of all, this Trump has better hair. Second of all, he's got more of a square jaw. He's got more of an avuncular look to him. Almost looks like a bit of a jester in some ways. So I wouldn't put it past Trump being a clone as well. I mean, really, what is going on here? There's a huge deception taking place. And I don't care if you think I'm crazy or not. I've gotten past that. I've totally gotten past it. It is food for thought. It is devil's food for thought. I'll give you another quick little tidbit story here. I was at a sandwich shop out in Dripping Springs, which is not far from my house. This is a couple months ago. And there was a young woman working at the counter. And this was not a come online by any stretch. It was really kind of just a notice. She was quite attractive in a typical model kind of way. And I said to her, I'm sure people told you this before, but you could model if you wanted to. You've got the classic structure. And she said, well, I was a model. And she began to tell me about her experience as a model. And my son was there, and she said, I could tell you so much shit about that world. I said, really? I should go back there and try and find her. She was kind of interesting. Anyway, just as I'm about to leave and get my sandwiches, she said, Fashion Week? I said, yeah. She said, I've been there, I've modeled there. I said, really? So I'm going to tell you a secret. A lot of those women you see, they're robots. I'm like, you've got to be kidding. She said, no, they're robots. And she was completely lucid, completely clear. And you know what? I believe her. It would make perfect sense in a lot of ways. So what's going on here? What are we talking about in terms of reality? It's very fluid, very loose, permeable. And I'm convinced that Hillary is done. She's gone. She's either dead or she's being carted out. She's being helped out of this physical domain. Whoever this Hillary is going to be interesting. Very interesting. If I were Trump, or if I were somebody who was really concerned, I would try to get some fingerprints just to see if they match. Of course, Hillary has never had her fingerprints taken because she's never been convicted of anything. Strange times, boys and girls, strange times. I've been fairly active on my website as of late. Been writing more, doing my best to stay active and try to, I am a one-man operation. I have some help, thank God, getting some of the video stuff up. But I'm a one-man operation. So that said, if you ever feel like donating to keep this thing afloat so I can do more, feel free. Go to my website, robertphoenix.com. I've got a donate button there. I would gladly take your donations. I've got to get a book out here soon. I've got about 3 of them in my head. I don't have the time. Basically, do readings and counsel and help people to pay the bills. I'd love to take about 30 days off and have a cushion and just do that and just get I've got at least one book, which is really going to be the best of my website, and pull it all together. And I've got at least 3 or 4 that are ready to go after that. But I work to keep a roof over my head and keep my son in $50 baseball lessons. So if you feel so moved or so inclined, donate. I'll give you another opportunity to contribute if you want, and you get something in return. I have a course. It's a 16-hour course in astrology. It's a really good course. Some people sell their courses for upwards of $1,000. If you want to buy mine for $295 and get a chart, and you want to get a printout of your chart, that's available to you. That is available to you for $295. But however, I'm running a special where for $195, 33% discount, you can get the entire course in a chart. Now, you're not a part of the webinar. You don't get to join the webinar, which we're going to do tomorrow, but you can be a part of this and get the course, $195. Go to my website, click on the 11th House Academy. When you go to sign out, the sign out code is Labor33. It's another way you can contribute. You get something in return. Think about that. It's the way to go. Anyway, why don't we do this? Let me play some music, and when I'm back after the top of the hour, we'll talk about this upcoming full moon and lunar eclipse, which should be very interesting, especially for yours truly. Last one. Oh, my God. Whew. Last one. Kick my behind. Kick my behind. So I should probably play some music where I won't get in trouble. The thing about, I swear to God, the thing about these copyrights with YouTube, and I played a snippet from My Dinner with Andre. It's where Andre Gregory talks about how we're all becoming robots and we're moving towards this fascistic new world order. A very prescient kind of take by, Andre Gregory. And then I get a copyright notice from Google/YouTube because some clown in Philadelphia, New York, who's a DJ, took that very long piece from the movie and put it in one of his tracks as a sample. So apparently he owns the rights. He doesn't own the rights to it. Louis Malle and Andre Gregory owned the rights to that. And Louis Malle is dead. And so it's the estate of Louis Malle, which is Susan Sarandon, because she was married to him when he died. So you got to be careful. I just don't want my stuff to get taken off the air because I've got some song that's not been cleared or that I don't own the rights to. So I have to pick one of my songs. Let's see. Let's just do sound vibrations. I've played this thing so many times. I'm kind of sick of it. But it's 5 minutes. I get to take a break. You get to take a break. We get to come back at the top of the hour or just after the top of the hour and get into this full moon. Here's sound vibrations. You're listening to the Friday FARcast. I'm Robert Phoenix. Welcome back. This is Robert Phoenix. You're listening to the Friday FARcast. And we've just gone down the old rabbit hole with Miss Hillary Clinton. One of the things that I wanted to talk about, but I didn't really touch on, is this whole concept of the resurrection, which is part of this magical act, right? Now, if you go back and look at the stuff that I posted about Jesus and Jesus' actual birth date being on 9/11, and that 9/11 throughout history is this very magical day, or a day that seems to have been, at the very least, exploited, either through numerous atomic explosions or the aggressive advances of the nation-state of Israel as it relates to the real estate in the Holy Land. It's a powerful day. There's a reason why 9/11 happened on 9/11, and not 9/12, and not 9/13. It happened on 9/11. So when Hillary Clinton, which is part of the magic trick, the illusion, she resurrects, just like Jesus, right? If we are connecting into, right, what happened with the life of Jesus, death of Jesus, how long does it take? It's 3 days? So we go from 9/11 to 9/12, roughly. She resurrects. She comes back on Thursday, which is the 15th. 4 days, not quite 3. We see her 9/11. It's the last day we see her. And she resurrects on the 15th, 4 days. It's part of it. It's part of the 9/11 mythos, the Orphic mystery. Somebody's calling in. It's always interesting to get a caller. Perhaps they have some interesting light to shed on the conversation, or do they just want to tell me that I'm nuts? Let's find out which one it is. Hello there.
Hey, I was listening to them.
Oh, you're just listening? Okay, I'll be happy to put you back on hold then. Let you listen.
Thank you.
All right. People do that. They call in. Just get on their phone. They want to listen. It's good. It's a good thing. Can I just tell you I'm frustrated? I'm a bit frustrated. And not because people aren't taking me seriously about this Hillary thing. I could really care less because I know what I know, and I understand what I'm putting out there. And for our times, I think it's perfectly acceptable content. But I'm frustrated, and this is going to change. I'm going to work at this assiduously, starting right now. My new path. I'm frustrated that, and this is not from an ego place, that this has not been a more successful enterprise for me. Because I believe in my heart of heart that and again, I'm not being egotistical, I know what's out there. In my heart of heart, I am as good on the radio side as anybody who's doing this right now, okay? I'm just being upfront. I've watched a lot of people, I've listened, and my game is right there. As an astrologer, I'm right there.
So my commitment to myself and you that in 2016, 2017, it is success or bust, and I'm not looking back. And look, if I'm successful, we're successful because we are part of, and this is Alex Jones's trip, right? He brings everybody along, and I'm bringing as many people along too. Alex has his thing, I got my thing, but we're all waking up. We are all waking up. This is the awakening. Now, I may be a little bit different because I'm a bit suspicious of the alt-right. I'm a bit suspicious of the bait and switch, the new world order that's coming, the organizing principle. So that puts me in a different camp. But I'm fired up, and I'm determined to have a larger profile coming into 2017. This is it. That's it. And I don't care what happens. I'm going to lay it out there, and we're gonna ride this thing together. All right, let's talk about astrology. Let's get into this full moon, this lunar eclipse. It's in Pisces. It is the final eclipse of the eclipse cycle, which started on March 8th of this year. We had a solar eclipse on March 8th, and now we're having a lunar eclipse on the 16th of September. In between, we had a lunar eclipse in Virgo and then a solar eclipse in Virgo. And the solar eclipse in Virgo happened on the 1st. It was very powerful, very intense. It happened right at the start of Mercury retrograde. So we had a supercharged Mercury retrograde cycle. This is unlike any other retrograde cycle that we've had in quite some time. And now here we go. We're getting ready to exit the retrograde cycle. That's on the 22nd, just as we come into the autumnal equinox. But we have tonight, at 23 degrees Pisces, the lunar eclipse and the final eclipse cycle. Next year, the nodes shift. They go to Leo Aquarius, and we get into some very interesting eclipse cycles at that time. Aquarius, of course, the sign of rebellion. Leo, the sign of kings. So what does tonight hold for us? Well, we are in the shadow of illusion when it comes to the moon in Pisces. The moon in Pisces is wonderful. It's poetic. It's mystical. It brings us to a sense of emotional dissolve, openness, oneness. We yearn for an expression of ourselves beyond ourselves. That includes ourselves, right? And this is the nature of Pisces. We want to dissolve. We want to be part of something larger, to return to that original state, the pre-Adamic fall. This is the nature of Pisces. And out of Pisces, during the fall, theoretically, we get separation. Separation. During this full moon, this Piscean full moon at 23 degrees, it's a very interesting degree because when you look at the Sabian symbol for 23 degrees, and I wrote about this on my website. You can go to my website and check this out. The website of the, let me see if I can find it here. The Sabian symbol, I just got to go to my website. I want to read it to you. This is what, hold on. What the entries in. This is what Dane Rudier has to say about this Sabian symbol for 23 degrees Pisces. A materializing medium giving a seance. So remember, the Sabian symbols came out of L.C. Wheeler and Mark Edmund Jones in San Diego in 1926. Every degree has a symbol associated with 360 degrees, 360 symbols. Linda Hill is kind of the modern, high priestess of the Sabian symbol. Dane Rudier, the interpreter. I still feel that Rudier is the exalted interpreter of the symbols. This is what he has to say. The ability to give of one's own vital energy to substantiate one's conscious ideals or unconscious desires. I'll read it again. The ability to give of one's own vital energy. One's own vital energy. So we're talking about magic. And to substantiate, meaning to validate or to prove one's conscious ideals. or unconscious desire. So whatever you've got, whatever you're unconsciously desiring, or whatever your conscious ideals are, during this lunar eclipse, there is the energy to substantiate them. Okay, so here we go. The person who believes he or she has a mission or mandate or any special gift that can be of value to his community must substantiate this belief. He has to produce results. Sometimes this involves difficulties in special conditions or circumstances. It always demands, to some extent, the gift of some power of value, which is deeply one's own. Now, everybody's got their own, whatever that own is, okay? The thought of sacrifice was suggested by the white lamb in the first symbol of this fivefold series. Something precious involved in a deeply personal experience has to be surrendered, offered to others. Now, we're in a very interesting area here, territory. We're into ritual, right? And, I mean, this is what Rudyard is beginning to kind of hint at. The ritual sacrifice has to be surrendered, offered to others, whatever that is. I'm not suggesting you go kill a chicken tonight. Only if the chicken, you have a deep personal relationship with the chicken. It just can't be a random chicken. And since many of you do not have a deep personal relationship with the chicken, I don't recommend it. The medium psychic substance provides the materials made visible in the phenomena, if the latter are genuine. After the seance, the medium is usually exhausted. The performer gives of his very life to the performance. This refers to the third stage of the 71st fivefold process. The display of psychic power that the symbol depicts can be interpreted positively or negatively according to the motives that induce the medium to give the seance. In its most constructive aspect, it suggests the keyword substantiation. The shadowy aspect of the process is deception. Now, what have we been talking about all day? Well, at least for the last, hour and 13 minutes or so? We've been talking about substantiation and deception as it relates to Hillary Clinton, and the disappearance and the reappearance, the inception, right? The prestige of, this is a great magic trick that's being played right now. So how does that relate to you? What do you have that you can let go of and resurrect to move from one form or one state, have it disappear and reappear as another? This is really kind of the energy that's happening tonight. Now, in the Sun in Virgo, we are talking about the light of consciousness. We are talking about the light of differentiation. This is how Virgo works. Virgo separates. Virgo bifurcates. Virgo analyzes. Virgo breaks down. Pisces does not do that. Pisces operates in a realm that's much more diffused, deals with inference, deals with allure. It is the twilight. It is the dimension of the twilight. This is where Pisces has its kind of, I wouldn't even use the word mooring, has its kind of geocosmic relationship. So tonight, we're getting into this place where magic can happen, where you can get guidance, so you can contact some deeper part of yourself that allows you to gain insight and wisdom into the waking, Virgoan part of your nature that you cannot have contact with in this kind of way. So remember that tonight. When you are taking in this energy of the full moon, this is a time where you can go within and really get some very interesting guidance. Now, I'm always an advocate that you be clear and clean, right? That you, if you're going to do something, ask that only the highest and the best come through. You want to ground this stuff. You don't want any interdimensional, bad guys to, attach themselves to your experience. I mean, maybe you do. I don't know. You're a lot more brave. I've gone down that path. And trust me, getting rid of them is not easy. It is not easy. So here we are. We can do this. This is the energy tonight. Light a candle. Go in your bathtub. Take this in. Spend some quiet time. Some people get into automatic writing. Some people get into prayer. Some people get into meditation. Some people pay real close attention to their dreams. Tonight, I would pay special attention to your dreams. Because occasionally, it is through the realm of the dream or through the realm of the illusion that we actually have an insight into truth and reality in a way that waking consciousness and the Virgoan mind cannot provide, especially if we're dealing with strange matters of deception, strange matters of magic, illusion, resurrection, culturally speaking. Now, I'm not saying you go into tonight looking to figure out if Hillary Clinton's a clone or not. That's not what I'm talking about. But what I'm sharing with you is that let's take this final eclipse energy and work with it in such a way that we can gain insight into parts of our psyche and nature and spirit that are not normally available to us. That's my piece to you. Piece. Just out of curiosity, and I haven't done this, let's look at the saving symbol for 23 Virgo. Let's do that. Let's see what that looks like. Because everything gets kicked off and initiated at 23. Remember, 23 is a magic number. So let's go into 23 Virgo. Let's just see what that is. This is the opposing energy. This is where we are now. A lion tamer displays his skill and character. Keynote, the need to tame one's vital energies in order to fulfill one's destiny. We see here the development of the concept of training. The true aristocrat is the individual who is in complete control of his vital and emotional energies. At the spiritual level, this includes the overcoming of pride in one's strength and mastery, and the pride attached to an exalted status or social office. This is the third stage of the 35th sequence of 5 symbols. The meaning of this phase of development is traditional evident. The whole process of social, ethical, and occult spiritual conditioning of the individual aims at the control of man's animal nature. The energies of this nature can be put to many uses, implied in any successful processes of taming and training is resoluteness and patience. You see, this is the exact opposite. This is the exact opposite of 23 Pisces. One is all about taming, character, skill, basically, taking the energy and accumulating it, being resolute, having patience. These are all Apollonian traits. We get into Pisces 23, we are into the realm of the Dionysian. A medium, right? A medium conducts a seance. What's interesting here is that 24 Virgo, because everything kicks in at 23, and then we go to 24. At 24 Virgo, this is phase 174, Mary and her little lamb. The need to keep a vibrant and pure simplicity at the core of one's being as one meets many tests of existence. So here's that purity, that land piece that Rudyard talks about, which is also connected to a land symbol at 5 Pisces. So this is very Virgo, right? Mary and her little lamb, Virgo 24, innocence. I'll read this. Coming after the preceding symbols, this one tells us that though great, spectacular, and resolute efforts are needed in order to achieve one's higher goals of destiny, still the essential quality as one journeys on the path is pure, spontaneous, fresh, and a non-violent approach to all encounters. This, of course, is Jesus' entreaty to his disciples, that they should be like little children Without such a deep, heartfelt simplicity, the seeker after spiritual experience or initiation is bound to find himself glamorized by his own successes to see his ego feeding on the drama of struggle and victory. Innocence. This is what this symbol represents. This is the fourth stage of the 35th five-fold sequence, and it represents us with a subtle hint of technique. Beyond individual prowess and social eminence, the individual whose innocence is fixed upon spiritualization should genuinely radiate innocence. Innocence. And that innocence is here and now. It's palpable. It's available. Innocence, purity, humility. This full moon. This is the harvest moon too, by the way. Remember that. We are harvesting the last 9 months. The eclipse cycle started 6 months ago, but we backed that up and we go all the way to the beginning of the year in December. So we are now harvesting the fruits of our actions, our thoughts, our emotions during this harvest moon. And, to that extent, you have to surrender and let go. If you're supposed to reap something that's a benefit and you're going to, bite into it and it's a juicy, crisp apple, using the symbol of the fall one more time, great. If it's not, then you have to deal with what you have to deal with. You have to deal with whatever it is you've created. This is the harvest moon cycle under the auspices of the eclipse at 23 degrees. The 24th degree of Pisces is very different than the 23rd. And I think it merits reading, just so we can do it and get it on the record, and because we're talking about this anyway. So let's look at the 24th degree. It's a very different symbol. Phase 354, Pisces 24, on a small island surrounded by the vast expanse of the sea, people are seen living in close interaction. So the keynote here, the need to consciously accept one's own personal limitations, that's Virgo, in order to concentrate one's energies and to live in a centered and fulfilled life. Every individualized person is a small island in the vast ocean of mankind. The ego fulfills a necessary function as it sets boundaries and gives specific character to the consciousness. Within these boundaries, a complex interplay, linking and integrating the various aspects of the personal life can operate constructively. In time, these ego boundaries can not only expand, but become a zone of intense interchange between the inner and the outer, between the individual and the community, between man and the universe. I just love where he goes big. The four-stage symbol tells us that the first duty of any man or woman is to be truly what he or she is as an individual. But this individual has particular dharma, a place and function in the vaster whole. That's correct. Everybody's got one. The island's inhabitants get subsistence from the sea, and in time learn to navigate the sea and interact with other islanders. Very Piscean, isn't it? And all eventually will come to realize their oneness within the whole earth, which includes everything. An appropriate key would be centralization. Centralization. Okay? So these are the 2 degrees that we are playing with here, 23-24 Pisces, 23-24 Virgo, as it relates to where the sun is and where the moon's going to be tonight during this harvest moon full lunar eclipse, where you can have psychic insight into your life and your processes. Somebody's trying to call me. Let's see. So it's Janelle running the Astro Yoga Retreat, which is happening, by the way, up in Canada, starting on the 29th, the 30th of September. I'll be there for a couple days doing readings and giving a talk on the Jupiter and Libra energies, Eros and Psyche, relationship, all that good stuff, which we are coming into. All right, well, why don't we call this a wrap? I think there's a lot of information. We put a lot of stuff out there, a lot of things to talk about, consider, come into contact with. I have one person on the phone here. Let's see if they want to talk before you sign off. Hey there, you're on the air.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Hello.
Jamie.
Hey, James. Brother. How are you? I'm on the road, and I don't have a lot of data on my plan, but I have a lot of cell phone minutes, so I thought I would just call in. But I missed the first hour, but I did catch the critical parts, and I agree with you.
Well, good. It's always good to be agreed with.
Well, what I'm saying is, you know what? I got the part where you were talking about you're as good as anybody out there, and I would 100% agree with the statement.
Yeah, well, thank you. I appreciate that. You know, every now and then, I have to own it my own way, and then have to kind of move things forward because, you know, it's an enterprise, and you know, it's not just about me; it's about a lot of other people, and you know, it is what it is, man.
Well, you know what? And I remember talking to a guy about humility, and he said humility is knowing your place. So, you know, it's not like, oh, you know, I'm a schmuck. Sort of like Jesus wouldn't say, you know, I'm a schmuck. He'd say, yeah, I've got this level that I've acquired over past lives, and, you know, here I am. So, right. You know, owning who you are and knowing your place, and you know what, it's good to recognize where you are. So, and you rock, you hit it out of the park every time. Well,
you know, I really feel like for me, when I first really started to think about the whole concept of humility, it really related to being open, to staying open. You know, because if you were humble, you would have the ability to stay open to experiencing other people. And in that state of openness, you know, you could really have an interesting interaction with the world around you. And then what happens when ego comes into play, we get closed off and our aperture gets smaller. So, you know, we're all here. We're all doing our best to understand who we are, what our role is, what our path is, and to share it, expand it, and manifest it with other people. And this is just, you know, this is just the nature of life.
Yeah, cool. Well, thank you very much, and I'm glad I caught the last little bit because it's a special time that we're going into with the eclipse, and yeah, I want to bring in the energy of innocence.
There you go. Amen to that.
So,
amen to that. All right, I'm going to put you back on hold. Thank you for listening.
Perfect.
And always great to hear from you, Jamie.
Okay, take care. Thanks. Bye.
My buddy up in Canada, Jamie, had a Canadian moment. An intersection of Canadian energies. I just asked Tessa Dick, Philip Dick's widow, ex-wife, in the chat room about clones. You know, Dick wrote, do androids dream of electric sheep? And of course, Blade Runner was the major motion picture that came out of that. So Phil did have a relationship with clones through the androids, the robotoids. All right, well, why don't we shove off here? I don't think I have a whole lot more to add today. You got 90 minutes of the download. So I'll be back on Monday. I'll be back on Sunday night with 11th House Radio. I don't think I'm going to be on Biome this time around. I don't know what's happening. Some people are asking me, when are you going to go? When are you going to come back? Are you coming back? You know, I shot a show there in the springtime with Regina, and they were supposed to air something in the fall. I sent them some charts. I have not heard back from them, so I'm not sure I'm going to be on for the fall with her. It is what it is. We move on. All right, you know the drill. Use your head to discern what's real. Your heart to stay open to what's possible. This is Robert Phoenix. I'll be back on Sunday nights. And let's get out of here with, of course, Philip K. Dick.
We are living in a computer-programmed reality, and the only clue we have to it is when some variable is changed and some alteration in our reality occurs. We would have the overwhelming impression that we were reliving the present, déjà vu, perhaps in precisely the same way hearing the same words, saying the same words, I submit that these impressions are valid and significant. And I will even say this, such an impression is a clue that at some past time point, a variable was changed, reprogrammed as it were, and that because of this, an alternative world branched off.